Morning in General Santos City awakened with the characteristic humidity of the Philippines. Manny Pacquiao gazed through the window of his luxury car at the streets that were once his home, feeling the contrast between the air-conditioned vehicle and the suffocating heat he knew existed outside. His thoughts wandered between childhood memories and the celebrity life he now led, while the driver slowly navigated the narrow streets of the Tango neighborhood where he had grown up in extreme poverty. The decision to return had been made, impulsively, after a night of reflection on his origins and the path he had traveled to become a boxing legend and influential politician. Dressed in simple clothes, jeans, a white t-shirt and a cap to disguise his famous face, Manny asked the driver to stop the car a few blocks before his final destination, preferring to walk the dirt roads to feel again the pulse of the place that had shaped him. The familiar aroma of dried fish, cooking rice, and the mixture of Filipino spices invaded his nostrils, instantly transporting him back to the days when, as a boy, he sold cigarettes on street corners to help support his family. The houses of wood and corrugated metal remained practically unchanged, although some now sported small satellite dishes or motorcycles parked in front. Modest signs of progress amid persistent poverty. Barefoot children ran through the alleys, chasing an improvised soccer ball without recognizing the man passing by them, the same man whose posters colored many of the interior walls of those simple homes. An elderly woman swept the front of her small shop, watching with curiosity the well-dressed stranger who walked with familiarity through the neighborhood, but without imagining that he was the most famous son of those streets. With each step, Manny felt the weight of his achievements and the distance that separated him from that life, but also a deep reconnection with his roots. His purpose for this visit wasn't merely nostalgic. He wanted to find Rizaldo Buenaventura, his childhood friend with whom he had lost contact for years, but whom he had learned, through mutual acquaintances, was experiencing extreme difficulties after an accident that had left him unable to work. Rizaldo's small house stood at the end of a narrow alley, almost hidden among other similar structures. The rusted metal roof and weathered wooden walls told the story of decades of struggle against poverty and tropical storms. Manny hesitated for a moment before knocking on the partially open door, feeling a lump in his throat at the thought of reuniting after so many years apart. The two-room residence revealed the extreme simplicity in which his old childhood adventure companion lived. The packed dirt floor was clean, but the dampness of the walls and the few worn pieces of furniture testified to the financial hardship faced by the family. Sitting in a makeshift wheelchair crafted from bicycle parts, Rizaldo stared fixedly out the window, observing life continuing outside without immediately noticing the visitor's presence. The years had not been kind to Rizaldo Buenaventura. His thin body and face marked by scars told the story of a life of hard labor in the ports of General Santos, carrying boxes of fish for decades until an accident with a crane had crushed his legs, leaving him permanently disabled. Beside him, a small table displayed yellowed photographs, among them one of two smiling boys holding improvised boxing gloves, Manny and Rizaldo, dreaming of a better future in a time when everything seemed possible. The silence was broken by the sound of light footsteps. A girl of approximately 12 years, Malaya, Rizaldo's daughter, entered carrying a small container of water. Her tired eyes and calloused hands revealed the early responsibility she had assumed after her father's accident, partially abandoning school to sell flowers at traffic lights and help support the family, which also included two younger brothers and her ill mother, Amihan, who worked as a laundress when her health permitted. Rizaldo's expression transformed upon noticing the visitor's presence, changing from habitual melancholy to absolute disbelief. His eyes examined the familiar face, trying to reconcile the image of the boy he had known with the man now before him, until a flash of recognition illuminated his countenance, causing silent tears to begin streaming down his face marked by time and hardship. The reunion was marked by a mixture of joy and sadness. Manny knelt beside the wheelchair, gently placing his hand on his friend's shoulder, while Rizaldo tried to absorb the reality of that moment. The girl Malaya observed the scene with curiosity, not initially understanding the importance of the visitor, until her father, with a choked voice, explained who this man was. the boy who sold cigarettes in the streets and who was now known throughout the world. The following hours passed in a journey to the past. Rizaldo showed Manny the newspaper, clippings he had carefully saved in a wooden box under his bed, documenting his friend's meteoric rise in the boxing world. Each victory, each title won, had been meticulously preserved as a treasure, a connection to his distant friend, and proof that someone who had shared the same miserable streets could reach the stars. The situation of the Buenaventura family revealed itself increasingly grave as the afternoon progressed. Beyond Rizaldo's useless legs, Manny discovered that Amihan suffered from a chronic lung disease, aggravated by her working conditions as a laundress, handling chemical products without adequate protection. The three children, Malaya, 8-year-old, Danilo and 5-year-old Bayani, the youngest, alternated between helping with household chores, working in the streets and attending school when possible, in a precarious balance that sacrificed their childhoods. The house had no running water or regular electricity, relying on improvised connections and rainwater collection. A small area in the back served as a makeshift kitchen where a pot with rice and some vegetables constituted the main meal of the day for the entire family. Scarcity was evident in every detail, from the thin mattresses on the floor to the many times mended clothes drying on an improvised clothesline. Seated in the only available chair, while the children and Rizaldo occupied the floor, Manny listened attentively to stories of recent years, feeling a mixture of gratitude for the direction his own life had taken and a profound sadness for his friend's situation. The distance between their current worlds was abysmal, but the shared memories of childhood created a bridge that no social difference could destroy. The same dreams, the same struggles, the same fears, just drastically different destinies. As why, evening fell when shadows lengthened across the alleys of the Tango neighborhood, Manny bid farewell to the Buenaventura family with the promise to return the next day. The path back to the car was traversed in a state of deep reflection, with thoughts revolving around the contrast between his life of abundance and his friend's daily struggle for survival. Guilt and gratitude mingled in his chest, along with a growing determination to do something significant to change that situation. The night in the luxurious hotel in downtown General Santos was spent making phone calls and planning. Manny activated his network of contacts, doctors, businessmen, local politicians, explaining the situation without revealing details that might publicly expose his friend. His influence as a national figure opened doors that would remain eternally closed for most Filipinos, and he was determined to use this privilege to help those who had been left behind. The following morning, before the first rays of sunlight touched the metal roofs of the Tango neighborhood, Manny was already on his way, this time accompanied by a trusted doctor who had agreed to examine Rizaldo and Amihan without fanfare. In the car's back seat, a box contained medications, food, and other essential items that would serve as immediate aid, while larger plans took shape in his mind. Dr. Eduardo Santos, specialized in community medicine, conducted a thorough examination of Rizaldo, determining that with appropriate surgery and intensive physiotherapy, there was a possibility of partial recovery of leg movement. For Amihan, the diagnosis was more severe. Years of exposure to chemical products had significantly compromised her lung function, requiring continuous treatment and an immediate change in living conditions to prevent the condition from worsening. The children watched with wide eyes the unusual activity in their home, especially when, after the doctor's visit, other people arrived bringing food, clothes, new mattresses, and even a small electric generator. The neighborhood began to notice the activity, generating curiosity, but Manny remained discreet, avoiding drawing attention to his presence, focusing only on creating a sustainable plan that could truly transform the life of his friend and family. On the third day of his visit to General Santos, Manny took Rizaldo to the hospital in a private ambulance, where a medical team was already waiting to perform more complete examinations and begin treatment. Discretion continued to be a priority, with doctors and staff instructed to maintain secrecy about the benefactor's identity, respecting the privacy of all parties involved. Meanwhile, a specialized nurse was sent to care for Amihan at home, initiating treatment that could stabilize her respiratory condition. Young Danilo and the youngest, Bayani, were enrolled in a private school near the neighborhood, with all expenses covered for the coming years, including uniforms, school supplies, and meals. For Malaya, whose education had been more compromised due to responsibilities assumed after her father's accident, a private tutor was hired to help her recover the missed content, preparing her to eventually return to the formal educational system. The Buenaventura family's house underwent a rapid but discreet transformation, preserving its external appearance to avoid arousing envy or questions in the community. Inside, however, the dirt floor was replaced with ceramic tiles. The walls received reinforcement and waterproof paint. A proper bathroom was installed, and the improvised kitchen gave way to a functional space with a gas stove and a small refrigerator. Running water and regularized electricity completed the basic improvements that transformed the small residence into a dignified home. The most important, however, was the creation of a sustainable source of income for the family. Manny acquired a small store at the entrance to the neighborhood, a space that had previously been a failed grocery store, and completely renovated it. The new establishment, registered in Rizaldo's name, would sell basic products to the community at affordable prices, creating a balance between social service and financial sustainability. The administration would initially be handled by a hired manager, who would gradually teach the trade to Rizaldo and Amihan, allowing them to eventually take full control of the business. In an emotional conversation with his friend during one of the physiotherapy sessions, Manny explained that this wasn't charity but justice, creating opportunities that the system had denied Rizaldo, just as it had denied so many others. It was also, he confessed in a moment of rare vulnerability, a way to thank him for support in the difficult times of childhood, when they shared scarce food and improbable dreams on the dusty streets of General Santos, long before fame and fortune entered the scene. A week after his arrival in General Santos, Manny's presence in the Tango neighborhood was no longer a secret. News about the boxing legend visiting his old streets spread quickly, attracting attention not only from local residents, but also from curious journalists. Despite attempts at discretion, cameras and reporters began circulating through the neighborhood, seeking the story of the idol's return to his origins. Manny's reaction was unexpected for those who knew only his public image. Instead of fleeing the exposure or using his security team to drive away the curious, he decided to transform the situation into an opportunity for something greater. He called an improvised small press conference in front of the newly renovated Buenaventura store, using the platform to speak not about himself, but about the living conditions in the neighborhood and the need for structural improvements that would benefit the entire community. The simple and direct speech, delivered in the local dialect that had been his first language, deeply touched those present. Manny spoke about social responsibility, about the importance of not forgetting one's origins, and about how true success was not measured by accumulated money, but by the ability to make a positive difference in others' lives. At his side, Rizaldo, sitting in his now adapted wheelchair, silently represented all those who, for lack of opportunity or by strokes of fate, remained trapped in cycles of poverty. The cameras captured the moment when Manny announced the creation of a community fund for the Tango neighborhood, with sufficient resources to build a basic medical center, renovate the local school, and implement an adequate water and sewage system. The initiative would be administered by a council of residents, with professional technical support, ensuring transparency and community participation in decisions. The Buenaventura's store would serve as a central point for meetings and planning of improvements. The residents' reaction was a mixture of emotion and renewed hope. Many openly wept, others applauded enthusiastically, while some simply observed in silence, trying to process the magnitude of that unexpected change in their lives. Among the crowd, faces of people who had known Manny in his childhood, teachers, neighbors, merchants, reflected the genuine pride of seeing the local boy who had conquered the world and returned to share his achievements. In the days following the announcement, the Tango neighborhood became a construction site and community planning hub. Engineers assessed infrastructure needs, doctors discussed the implementation of the health center, and educators planned improvements to the local school. The Buenaventura's store, now officially inaugurated as Mercado Pamilya, Family Market, transformed into the beating heart of that renewal, with Rizaldo, even in his wheelchair, gradually assuming a community leadership role that surprised even himself. Rizaldo's medical condition improved slowly with proper treatment. After the first corrective surgery and weeks of intensive physiotherapy, he managed to stand for a few minutes with support from parallel bars, bringing tears to everyone present in the clinic. Amihan also showed clear signs of recovery, with her breathing easier and color gradually returning to her previously pale and haggard face. The children flourished in their new school environment, especially Malaya, who revealed an exceptional talent for mathematics and sciences. National and even international media reported on Manny's initiative in his old neighborhood, generating a wave of interest that attracted other investors and philanthropic organizations. What had begun as a personal gesture to help a friend was transforming into a larger movement of community revitalization, with companies offering jobs, universities creating scholarship programs, and local authorities finally turning their eyes to the basic needs of that long-neglected area. On a particularly significant afternoon, while supervising the installation of the drinking water system that would serve the entire neighborhood, Manny was approached by a group of local children. The little ones didn't ask for autographs or photos, as would be expected with a celebrity. Instead, they proudly showed their school notebooks with good grades and talked about their newly discovered dreams of becoming doctors, engineers, teachers, dreams that now seemed possible thanks to the changes underway in the community. That night, sitting on the porch of the renovated Buenaventura house, sharing a simple but nutritious meal with his friend's family, Manny experienced a sense of fulfillment that not even his greatest triumphs in boxing or politics had provided. The smile on Rizaldo's face as he told about his participation in the community council meeting, the sparkle in Malaya's eyes as she explained the physics exercises she had learned, Amihan's easier breathing as she served the food, each small sign of positive transformation was worth more than any world title or applause from crowds. 3 months had passed since Manny's discreet arrival in the Tango neighborhood. His stay in General Santos had extended far beyond what was initially planned, with national and international commitments being reorganized to allow his presence during the crucial phases of community transformation. Now, however, it was time to leave, with the promise of regular returns to monitor the progress of the implemented initiatives. The farewell took place in the neighborhood's central square, recently revitalized with native trees, benches, and a small recreational area for children. Hundreds of residents gathered to personally thank the illustrious son of the community, forming orderly lines for a brief handshake or a word of gratitude. Manny greeted each one with the same attention and respect, remembering the names of those he had known in his childhood, asking about family members, and demonstrating a genuine interest that transcended the typical formality of public figures. The most emotional moment occurred when Rizaldo, supported by special crutches, managed to take a few steps toward his friend under enthusiastic applause from the crowd. The two men embraced for a long time, their silent tears saying more than any speech could express. Rizaldo's recovery journey would still be long, but each small progress represented a victory over the fate that seemed sealed after the accident, living proof that significant changes were possible when adequate opportunities were offered. Before entering the car that would take him to the airport, Manny made one last symbolic gesture. He handed Rizaldo the keys to a small office attached to the Mercado Pamilya, which would serve as headquarters for the newly created Buenaventura Pacquiao Foundation for Community Development. The organization, legally established and with funding guaranteed for the next 10 years, would be presided over by Rizaldo, with support from hired professionals, and would focus on expanding the successful initiatives from the Tango neighborhood to other underprivileged communities in General Santos. The car slowly pulled away, with Manny looking through the rear window at the neighborhood that had shaped him and that he now helped transform. The dirt roads had given way to proper paving. The improvised electrical connections were replaced by regular utility poles, and the open sewage had disappeared under a functional basic sanitation system. More important than the physical changes, however, was the transformation in the residents' faces, the awakening of hope, dignity, and belief in the possibility of a better future. As the simple houses of the Tango neighborhood gradually disappeared on the horizon, Manny reflected on how his journey had begun on those same streets, selling cigarettes to help feed his family. The hungry boy from decades ago could never have imagined the heights he would reach or the impact he would one day be able to generate. More than the world titles, more than the accumulated fortune or political influence gained, his true legacy was there, in transformed lives, in renewed smiles, in resurrected dreams, concrete proof that even the humblest origins can produce extraordinary fruits when watered with opportunity, hard work, and above all, the commitment to not forget the path traveled and to extend a hand to those left behind. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.